Charles from GMAT Ninja Tutoring here. If you've ever had the feeling that, hey, I feel like I know a lot of stuff, why is my test score still lower than I think it should be? If that's you, this video is for you. I'm gonna go through some of the things that we've seen over many, many years of teaching that are not exactly skills. So often when we take a test, we think, hey, I'm gonna study a bunch of whatever, geometry, algebra, reading, logic, whatever it might be, vocabulary, and that's what I need to do. For some of you, that is what you need to do, and that's great. But for most of the students we see, there's something else going on that's doing most of the damage. So I'm gonna get into some of those things. So if you're thinking about tutoring with us, please watch this. This is gonna be really good for you to get a sense of how we think about going deeper into your issues and figuring out what's really wrong. If you're self-studying and you're going, I don't know what's going wrong, yeah, watch this too, and hopefully it'll jog your thinking about something, and you can always reach out to us if you have questions, and if we can point you to a resource for one of these particular things, we're more than happy to do that. All right. If your score is stagnant, if you've been studying and it's not moving, your issue is probably not skills. Yep, for some of you, you need to learn more, whatever, geometry, vocabulary, probability, whatever it might be. That's straightforward. We've got videos, you can learn that stuff. We love teaching it. I'd say for the students we work with, I'd say maybe 30% of the gap between where our students are and where they want to be in aggregate. Maybe 30% of that gap is skills, something we can teach. Here's an approach to critical reasoning. Here's an approach to vocabulary. Here's a math concept. The other 70% is the other stuff. Let's get to the other stuff. Bad habits, that's the big one. So what do I mean by that? The most obvious manifestation of bad habits is you miss questions that are easy for you that you should get right. So if that happens, what might be going on under there? So one very obvious thing might be bad time management. You get stubborn on some questions, you have to rush through others. That's fairly straightforward, sometimes hard to break the habit, but it's pretty straightforward to diagnose. Are you spending too much time on some questions? You can see it in the data right away, right? But sometimes there's a deeper issue why you're making those careless mistakes. Maybe it's the psychology that you think, hey, easy question, I'm gonna do it fast to save time for the harder ones. Adaptive tests like the GMAT GRE Executive Assessment, absolutely backwards, because when you miss easy questions on adaptive tests, you get disproportionately punished in terms of your score. So don't let that happen. It might just be the psychology of easy ones, I'll do them quick. Hard ones, I'll take my time. Backwards for these tests. Take your time on the easy ones, be precise. Sometimes it's something deeper in the habit. So for example, some people never get in the habit of reading a quant question twice. You always want to read a quant question twice. Why? Well, number one, it gives you time to kind of process and think through the best path forward. Also, we see it all the time. People start answering the wrong question. Waste time or just get the wrong answer because they're answering the wrong question. So often we're trying to rebuild those habits with our students. It's often not sexy. Read twice, check your work as you go. Maybe you have to read again at the end. Reading comprehension, we might talk about how intensely you're reading. We might talk about altitude. Are you hanging on every single detail and trying to squeeze too much out of the passage? If so, that's a bad habit we want to change. Are you skimming at times? That's a bad habit we want to change. Do you skip certain things that you're uncomfortable with? Another bad habit. Certain topics, do they bother you? So you read them differently? Bad habit. So this could be any number of things. And if you feel like you keep missing certain kinds of questions, think about, hey, what's your process? Is there something that you're doing every single time where you start flailing, lunging, skimming, rushing? Look to those habits and see if you can change them if you're studying on your own. All right, next chunk, psychology. This is another really, really big one. The data is not perfect out there in published research, but among people who are pursuing graduate degrees, there's some evidence that says that about 70% of people have some sort of test anxiety once they get in their 20s and 30s and start applying for graduate programs. And that's about what we see from our students. I'd say about 70% have some sort of anxiety that holds back their test taking. Now, test anxiety isn't just my palms are sweating and I'm shaking and I feel jittery. For a lot of people, it's just, hey, on test day, my score goes down, my mind goes blank, I don't think as sharply. You might not feel a thing. You might just go, wow, all of a sudden it's harder to read. That could be a sign of anxiety. If this is something that you think is an issue for you, got lots of stuff on our YouTube channel, some great test anxiety videos, tons of stuff on our website as well. So hit us up there if you're curious about this at all. And again, it's more common than you think. Be honest with yourself if that's in there, because there are things you can work on to address it. Again, there's a reason why we've got about 10 tutors at GMAT Ninja and 2 psychologists on staff. It's because there really is value in addressing this head on. Now, psychology could involve a bunch of other things. So if you're struggling with, let's say, depression, maybe generalized anxiety, something else like that, some other mental health issue, again, supremely common. I feel for if you're going through it, tons of it in my family, every side of it. If that's a thing for you, man, it is hard to take a test when you're struggling with depression. It's a real thing. Be honest with yourself about it. Don't force your way through the test if you're not feeling right. Get the help you need. And just as importantly, you can apply for testing accommodations. So extra testing time, there might be other accommodations for you. All of these standardized exams will get you testing accommodations if you have a properly diagnosed condition, whether it's psychological or something else. So please give that some thought. And again, if you need help kind of connecting with resources for accommodations, please hit us up, gmatninja.com. All right, next category, focus. Yeah, thanks, Captain Obvious. If you can't focus, it's hard to take a test to the best of your ability. Yeah, no kidding. But what's going on underneath there? So when we see somebody whose focus kind of comes and goes and their performance comes and goes because they're not able to focus sometimes, one obvious possibility is ADHD. And some of you have a diagnosis, and if that's the case, again, please make sure you have testing accommodations. You deserve extra testing time if you have ADHD. We meet a shocking number of people in their 20s, in their 30s, having very successful careers, very successful lives, undiagnosed ADHD, incredibly common, especially women. So if you feel like there's something going on with your focus, we can point to some resources, certainly give it some thought, look into it. It is remarkably common. We can go on all sorts of rants. We've got some great psychologists we work with around ADHD, some great coaches. That term is something that will be outdated in some number of decades. It kind of refers to a whole lot of different manifestations of behavior and thinking. I think in 30 or 40 years, we're going to laugh at that term and go, wow, we use that for a whole constellation of things. We shouldn't have lumped them under this thing. For now, that's the term we use, and it's imperfect. And your symptoms might look very, very different than somebody else's. So again, if you're interested, we'll point you some resources for that. The other big thing with focus, not sexy, nobody wants to hear it. Often it's physical health. A lot of the people we meet who are applying to graduate programs, a lot of you guys work really hard. We love it. We respect it. We assign a lot of homework. We want you to work hard. Some people work too hard. And if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night consistently, you will underperform. And there's a ton of research backing that. There aren't really very many people in the world who can sleep for 4 hours and really perform well, especially not on these kinds of tests. Those exceptions are exceedingly rare. You are probably not one of them. Get your 8 hours of sleep a night. Over the long haul, you will perform much better. I guarantee it. I know, not sexy. A lot of the people we meet, they skip meals. They have no life outside of work and studying. They don't exercise. All of those things will feed into an inability to focus. It will get worse over time. If you're burnt out, it's not going to get better on these exams. So if that's an issue, any of that stuff, sleep, exercise, burnout, working too hard, lack of exercise, lack of a life outside of work and studying, you're unhappy because of that stuff. It's going to affect your focus. It's going to affect your score. We are not a wellness company. We help you get your test scores better. And I'm not saying this to be a nice guy, but the better you take care of your body, the better you'll perform. Not sexy, but it's a thing. If you need a nutritionist, you want to meet an amazing online personal trainer that can help you with exercise for mental clarity, hit us up. Sleep coach, hit us up. We'll send you to somebody we really trust. All right, last category. This is a fun one. Other often undiagnosed stuff. Brains are diverse, remarkable, fascinating. No two brains work the same way. Thank you again, Captain Obvious. But that's part of what's kept me teaching for what am I up to now? 27 years, something like that, is because I never know what's going to come in the door. I never know who I'm going to get to work with next week, whose brain might be totally different from anybody I've ever seen before. And there's obvious things in terms of brain function for standardized testing, dyslexia, dyscalculia, but then we can get in all sorts of funky things that we've seen over the years. So sometimes there's a disconnect between the way your eyes work and the way your brain works. Convergence insufficiency is one version of that. We had a student who didn't really have a specific diagnosis in the end, but we ended up sending him to, I'm not making this up, an occupational ophthalmologist who helped get his brain and eyes synced up because his reading was really weird and we did some eye tracking and his eyes were over here while his brain was over here. Anyway, all sorts of interesting things that can happen. We actually had a student who had a conversation with us about how he thinks that his heavy marijuana usage in undergrad really affects his brain function now. So we worked to customize how to have him think about his test taking to help overcome that. So any number of really interesting things could be going on here. If you feel like your brain works differently than other people's brains, yeah, look into it because it probably does. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And if it is something that's diagnosable, you can get testing accommodations, might be extra testing time, might be a separate testing room, might be something to do with how things are laid out on the screen, if it's a visual processing difference. So bottom line here, all sorts of things might be holding your score back. If you feel like something's different as you take the test, or you feel stagnant, or you feel like you don't learn the way other people learn, all sorts of things could be going on. We love looking into those things and trying to get people to the right resources. So if you do want to work with us, we love getting into that stuff. And if you're studying on your own, yeah, please poke around. And if you need some directions, hit us up, gmatninja.com, or let us know in the comments. We'll do our best to help. All right, that's it. Hope this helped a little bit, and have fun studying.